I'm having a warm drink to begin the second part of the day. It's 3 p.m. here in Hong Kong. So welcome everyone to this next edition of the ECA Labs. It's been a while since we last connected. So thank you, Alex, for setting this up, and welcome you all. We are expecting more people that accepted the session today. So I'm sure people will show up later, most likely. And we've sent a reminder on the WhatsApp group. So yeah, let's begin anyways, so that it doesn't end up being too late. Oh yes, people are showing up to the party. Hi, Mas Baran. Hello, Mas Kevin. Welcome. How are you doing?
Hi.
So nice to see you guys. Hi. Welcome. Nice to see you. Nice. Thank you for joining today. Oh, we've got.
You too. Yeah, we are both in the same group. Yeah.
Well done. Excellent. That's fantastic. Well, welcome you all. I'm going to start sharing my screen on the presentation. And yeah, today we have a very important topic to cover, which is how do we measure impact of collaboration, of all the efforts that you are all doing at a landscape level to bring in multi-stakeholder collaboration. And what are we going to do in terms of measuring that impact for our reporting purposes, but also to understand what are the priorities we want to focus on next year. So let's begin. Oh, sorry. Let me just open the right presentation. Here it is. Very good. So, as we always say in this kind of spaces, we all make collectively the quality of this session by showing up and learning. So remember, if you can turn on your video, please do so, because it is a small space that we have to potentially see each other, see other people from other landscape teams, and let's harness that opportunity to meet, even though it's virtual, but at least we meet and see each other again. Participation is quite crucial. All these sessions are created in a way that rely, but also encourage your participation. The ECA Labs are a space where we look at different tools and frameworks that help bring collaboration and systems change into your work. So we are meant to apply whatever we see here to our work. And this is the space where we always start doing that. And then we continue through the ECA workouts, which are those weekly or bi-weekly sessions that we hold with each landscape team to work through their priorities and their support needs as they emerge. And then, as we always say, this is an ongoing journey, and we're almost entering the end of year 2. So we've done so much already, and we still have a way to go. So we'll just continue learning. As we always do, we start these sessions with a paired check-in. And this is an opportunity to perhaps spend a bit of time reflecting and having a conversation with a colleague or someone that you haven't seen in a while from another landscape team, or even from your own landscape team. So yeah, the invitation today is that we take 10 minutes, so 5 minutes each person. And the prompt question is, think of a big change in your life. Could be a recent one or could be one from many years ago, but it has to be a big change. And the question is, what were the visible things that changed? and what were the invisible things that changed? And since Masbaran, you are with someone in the meeting room and you are connected with one laptop, perhaps you can do the paired check-in together, if that makes sense. It's just the two of you, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can do the paired check-in together, and maybe we can pair up the rest of the participants. Alex, are you okay with that, or do you want me to do some help? Do you want me to help?
All is clear, and 10 minutes, yes?
Yes, 10 minutes is perfect.
Perfect. So in this case, I will open the breakout room, and Masbaran, you will be in a separate one, but since both of you are in a real room together, yes, you will do the checkout together. Okay.
Would you like me to go with Leonida? No, Reza is with Leonida. Okay, perfect. So we have, everyone is even. Cool. Were you on holidays? So nice to see everyone's faces. Thank you for coming back. And just maybe a quick popcorn feedback. We did that with another group of the Green Commodities Program project teams, and popcorn feedback is, just like popcorn. Who wants to pop and say something sort of short and sweet about what you've heard or what came up for you? And we have this game where we say, okay, if there's no corn popping, then we need to turn on the fire and make it make the pot hotter so that the corn pops. Hi, I can see a little one there. Maybe she wants to pop. How about you, Mafebri? What came up for you, or what did you hear?
So I talked with Ajeng. Ajeng told me about her experience when she had a leadership coach. She said that it changed her life because she has thinking partner, and it empowers her in some way. So it was a great experience to have the leadership coach.
And did you manage to discuss what changed? What were the visible changes and the invisible changes?
The invisible one, she felt empowered, and the visible is like she has full confidence when she show up in a meeting or a workshop or anything. So yeah, and also because
Excellent.
I am in the same team with Ajeng, I also can see the difference. So
Oh,
yeah,
great.
it was great. Yeah.
And we'll come back to that. Excellent. So you can notice the difference. So there's evidence that you capture from what you see, but there's also the invisible aspect of how she feels it contributed. Excellent. How about Leonita? What came up for you, or what did you hear that caught your attention?
Yeah. So I paired with Faris Hidayat from Cultiva, and from my side, in regards to the both of us, it's easier to share about the visible changes because it's visible. While for the invisible, it's hard. Even we cannot find what is the invisible because it's not visible. So for the visible part, from my side, the visible changes in my works. Previously, I work with NGOs, UN as an implementer, and currently I work with Swiss Embassy in SECO. So it's like changing my situations from implementer to donor. So it's also changed my role and also my function a lot, but it helps me to understand what happens on the field side. While for Fareza, previously he worked on a private sector, and now he worked, I think it's been a year. He works with Cultiva. So, and his work now with Cultiva is talking about the traceability of supply chain. If I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, Mas Fareza. So, compared to his previous work in the private sector, now he needs to adjust her language because he worked mostly with farmers. So he needs to like make it simple, basics, and find the key things to increase the interest from the farmers to implement or to go with our projects. Please add, Pavareza, if I miss something or if
Excellent.
I say it wrong. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to share before we go back to the presentation? Perhaps Batri, would you like to share something?
Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. I was talking with Mas Kevin Channel from Diameter. The big changes in his life. I mean, because Mas Kevin talked to me about her life is when he decide to go to and work with NGO for Diameter. Previously, he worked with a private company and specific mining company. So it's different work when he work with a private company. He always like technical, practical work, but in NGO he can see about the impact what they do to society and things like that. So it's interesting and yeah, give a different perspective about her his job right now. So yeah, Mas Kevin, if I'm mistaken or I miss something, you can add. Thank you.
Yeah, overall it's right to the point, but the NGO that I was mentioning in our conversation was not Diameter, but it was actually another NGO before I joined Diameter. There's a small minor correction from me.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. And as we always do, there is a purpose to this question, which we will unpack in a minute. But I want us to think about this idea of change and how do we notice change and what are the things that we see or don't see, or how do we go about evaluating and noticing change? Because that's important in the work that we do. And this is obviously the focus of the session today. Let's go back to providing some context on where we are at on the ECA labs and all the capacity building around collaboration and systems change. This year, we had a series of ECA lab sessions, which started in May. We worked on activating the tailored support and focusing much more on spending time with each landscape where they have specific needs, where you have specific needs. And we've identified some key priority thematic areas that you wanted to receive support on from ECA. Then we had a 4-session series on working with power, where we did the power analysis, the power mapping, and we kind of looked at what are the power dynamics at a landscape level, but also, you know, as an SLPI project that are perhaps preventing us from moving forward and bringing about the change that we want to see. We, on our side, are preparing a report on the outcomes of that series, and so you will receive that very soon. Then we had a session that we called Balcony View, which was this idea of taking a step back and really looking at what's been done so far after a year and a half of project. What's the impact that we've achieved and that we want to continue achieving, and how can ECA, effective collaborative action, be in service and support of that. Finally, we have now this period of time where we are looking at how do we measure and assess collaboration. With some of you, we already started looking at signals of change, which is our tool for assessing the baseline state of collaboration. And with other landscapes, we've been focusing on other priorities coming from the needs of the landscape. So today we're going to kind of even the play field. Then end of November, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the year-end session where we're going to celebrate success, harvest learnings, and we are also going to present how some changes in terms of how we're going to go about the ECA support in 2025, seeing and noticing the evolution of what you need and what we feel is going to be of most service to you. And then the facilitation techniques, the multi-stakeholder facilitation techniques workshop, we are planning it for next year, hopefully in a face-to-face, in an opportunity where we can meet face-to-face, because this is a one-day workshop. And yeah, it's much better if we can do it face-to-face. So this is where we're at now. I can see there's a message on the chat. Thank you, Alex, for putting all the resources on the digital group. Let's also, this is an invitation to start using or to continue using, that group much more. It's a wonderful platform for knowledge sharing, for opening up discussions, and we will incorporate it as well into our work under the ECA labs for knowledge exchange next year. Much more actively. So let's go into the topic of the day, which is how do we understand and measure change? And so some of you might remember this slide from a previous workshop. Maybe some others were not there. So, but I would like to ask you, what do you see here in terms of change? What do you notice? What do you see here? In terms of change, what is this at the left, at the right? Sorry, at the left side. And what do you see at the right side?
Stages or
Yeah. Okay.
stage
Yeah.
or phase, I think.
Different stages. Yes, different stages of change. Perfect. What else? What else do you see? Anyone else that would like to share, please open your mic and share openly. We'll hear from one more person and then we'll move on. remember everyone that this is about the quality of this session is a shared responsibility. So it is quite important that we can connect by sharing and not just by hearing me talk. The richness in these sessions is much more into what you have to say than what I have to say. So who would like to go, please?
I try, maybe this is the example
Yeah.
of visible changes.
Yes, excellent. Absolutely. Exactly. Thank you, Masbaran. So change is visible here. It's very, very visible, right? From a caterpillar, we see a butterfly. Now, what happens in this next slide? We don't see anything changing in particular. This is not one of those slides that's asking you to notice the mini differences between one image from the other. These are actually the same images from the same person. And yet we cannot really assess or tell by the pictures whether there's something different in each one of those versions of this person or not. So the question that follows is, from these two versions of change, what does change in your landscape work look like more? Does it look like the caterpillar that becomes a butterfly? Or does it look like the guy that seems to look always the same, but perhaps he might have changed along the way? What do you think?
I think invisible
Yes.
ones.
I think
Yeah. Go ahead, Mas Reza.
it depends on who we are targeting. So for farmers, I think you are able to see visible changes in the way they practice, they conduct good agriculture practices, and eventually they are able to improve their productivity. And then if we're supporting change at the government level, you don't really see that, but maybe deep down inside internally, they are changing, but they don't say it, maybe because of political reasons.
Yeah. Thank you, Faresta. Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. And it's a very important point that you raised, that change is very contextual. So it's going to be different for each stakeholder and for each aspect of the work that's done with each key stakeholder. Perhaps with farmers, the changes in agricultural practices are very visible, but the changes in terms of capacity to influence or collaborating through different or in cooperatives, and the ways in which we can help them build that capacity for more sophisticated participation, for them to raise their voices, that is less visible. So even with the same stakeholders, we might have aspects of change that are more or less visible. And I can see the comments. Thank you to those of you who added them on the chat. Seeing transformation from small to big, stages of transformation, the process of change, and how change can happen in stages and can be in any form. Yes, absolutely. All of this makes absolute sense. So let me go back to the slides. Now, how do we support change from an ECA perspective? And so, because we are in that sort of dichotomy of working with visible and invisible change, this year in particular, we've been really taking a step back and trying to articulate what are the ways in which ECA contributes to change, both the visible and the invisible. And so the way that we frame this is that we work on 3 dimensions of change. We work on capacity building through building leadership, collaboration, and systems change capacities, to you as implementing partners, but also on the ground directly to key stakeholders in certain projects and in certain opportunities. We support the development of facilitation skills, which are key in collaboration and really supporting multi-stakeholder collaborative forums and spaces. And by enabling and facilitating learning by doing spaces, reflective practices, inner development, as we do here in this lab, ECA lab sessions. Then we have the collaborative spaces where we support the design, the implementation, and the strengthening of these multi-stakeholder collaborative spaces. We facilitate collaborative spaces on the ground, and we bring in mechanisms for integration, coordination, and consistency of plans, policies, and actions at different levels. So this is the part of convening and interministerial coordination and bringing in all the different levels together from landscape, from subnational to national. And then we have a third component, which is the advisory support, where we provide our advisory services to embed collaboration and systems change in project design and execution, and in any kind of technical solution around food and agricultural commodity systems and new ways of working that support this food systems transformation. So those are the 3 ways in which we try to support both the visible and the invisible change. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because this is the way in which we are articulating how we are measuring the impact of our work. And the conversations that we will have, that I will have with each of you, with each landscape team from now until end of the year, are going to revolve around these 3 areas. So how has ECA helped you in building capacity of yourself and your stakeholders, in strengthening the collaborative spaces, and in enabling or supporting the implementation of the technical solutions? How do we collect data to measure impact? How do we, as you know, the example that Bafebri was giving, I noticed the change, I saw it, that's something tangible. There are other ways also to collect data. The way that we use is both qualitative and quantitative. So interviews, impact stories, testimonials, the pulse checks and the surveys that we offer during every session, reflections on learnings. And then from a quantitative perspective, sorry, this is repeated, it shouldn't be repeated, but it's basically all the numerical data around surveys, and signals of change is also one of them. I'm not going to go through the detail of this, but just to say that you are going to receive, as part of the presentation from this session, the 1-pager overall of the ECA monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework. That's going to be our guidance towards these sessions that we will have on the ECA workouts, looking at the impact and the contribution that effective collaborative action has had in your landscape team work, and what are the lessons learned, and what can we do differently next year to increase that support and that impact. Yeah. And as you know, like any email framework, we have activities for each one of these dimensions. We have activities, outputs, and outcomes. And then we have impact. Yeah, how are we impacting the system? And we have the 6 dimensions of food systems change and some of the key thematic areas around food systems transformation that we look at from a FACS and UNDP's perspective. So you're going to receive this. I'm not going to go too much into the detail of this, And we're going to go through it during the ECA workouts. What I do want to focus on much more today is on the signals of change tool. And we're going to have the opportunity to discuss this also in breakout groups today. But the signals of change tool, you might remember from last year that we implemented the signals of change tool for around October, November. And we did that internally. So we looked at the 10 key principles of effective collaborative action, and you or representatives of your landscape teams rated each one of these 10 key principles, and we curated that data and we produced a report on which were the key aspects that were preventing change from happening, which we call the limiting conditions, and what were the things that were already happening in terms of progress in change, which are the signals of change. Now, from the implementation of last year, we learned a few things. And so what we've done is we've reorganized the 10 key principles into 5 core dimensions to simplify the understanding of the information and the grouping of the data. We've added a step-by-step guided approach to support the implementation. We've enhanced the scope of the assessment, so we are covering additional dimensions that were not covered in the signals of change last year, like financing and resources and technical capacities available to support the multi-stakeholder collaboration. And then we are also strengthening the documenting and reporting of the results by producing a report of the baseline state of collaboration as a much broader diagnostic tool on collaboration. So these are the changes that we're bringing. Now, all of this effort, because it does take time from you and from all of us to conduct this kind of assessments, it takes time from our stakeholders. So it's really important to understand and see what's the value behind it. And the value behind signals of change is that we can have an articulated starting point of, or an articulated snapshot of where the collaboration is at, that we can share with our stakeholders so that we have a common understanding of what is that departing point or that point in time, that picture that we've taken, where are we at? And you will notice also that this is quite important in the context of mostly having different stakeholder groups, perhaps having opposing views on how much trust there is in a collaborative space or how much inclusivity is there in a collaborative space. So the fact that we can show this with data and in a documented way, it's really powerful because it helps stakeholders open their eyes to the understanding that there's different perspectives and that they might think that the forum, the multi-stakeholder forum, is incredibly inclusive, but there are other key stakeholder groups that are not having that same experience. So from that, it is that we can start working and opening spaces for meaningful conversations. It helps take intentional action based on the outcomes of the assessment, prioritize support where needed, and of course, measure progress and success and impact and learning over time. How does it work? It's an assessment tool. It's quite straightforward, and it has different steps where we gather qualitative and quantitative data. It's organized under 5 dimensions, which include the 10 key principles, and it's mostly conducted via online survey and targeted interviews. And the outcome, or the output, sorry, of this process is a report, which is the assessment of the state of collaboration that reflects on the sense-making of the data collected and suggests next steps. I'm going to share an example with you very, very soon, and then we're going to take a break and we're going to I'm going to share the Ghana example after the break, and then we will do a breakout group conversation. These are the 5 dimensions that we are looking into when it comes to assessing the state of collaboration. We look at leadership and trust, objective, vision, and structure, participation and collaborative action, resources, capacities, and financing, and learning and measuring impact. And for this, we've assigned and allocated the 10 key principles, one to each of these dimensions. And we'll probably add a few more in these 2 dimensions that don't necessarily have a 10 key principle attached, but we still have questions to gather data on. This is just a different way of presenting the information from the graphic with more detail. So we will leave this to you in case you want to consult it. And this is how the different steps of conducting the Signals of Change Plus, how do we go about executing it? So what we do is first we look at the assessment. We're going to look at the assessment with each one of you and adapt the questions. Then we're going to select key stakeholders that will participate, or perhaps a specific opportunity, an upcoming workshop where you can conduct and facilitate the data gathering live through Mentimeter. Then we are going to also brief stakeholders on the purpose, again, to make sure they understand there's value in this exercise. Once we have the assessment clearly established, we upload it on a digital platform, and you can choose to either provide that online survey asynchronously, so just over email and ask people to fill it in with a deadline, or as I said, facilitate the exercise live on a particular workshop or event that you have planned already. And we are going to discuss the details of this when we meet in the ECA workout session. Then we collect the data, analyze and document the results. That is something that we are going to do for you so that you don't have to bear with that burden. And because we have also that muscle of having done it with other countries and other regions. So we have like a method to go through the data as well. Then we conduct interviews to clarify and validate the interpretation of those results with the key stakeholders. And finally, we produce the report. Yeah, so we're going to see the example of the tool and how it's been implemented in Ghana, particularly, and some tips and tricks in a minute. I'm now going to stop sharing the screen, and I'm going to ask you, before we go on a break, any comments, any questions? What's your experience in trying to assess whether an intervention that you've done has made any difference in terms of supporting your multi-stakeholder collaboration and spaces and forums that you are supporting at the moment? Can I invite perhaps Ms. Baran, if you can share the story of how you worked on the landscape collective vision, because I think for LASER, there's a trajectory of sort of bringing a multi-stakeholder forum into agreeing to a collective vision.
Yes, Sole. Yeah, for us, it was just about the momentum actually, because there was another consortium development program as well coming to the landscape with private as well, so that we needed to consolidate the interest, the actions, so that we need to be aligned in the work in Singkil district, one of the districts in Lezer, and eventually we arrive in the joint visions and shared visions called visi landscape or landscape visions that aims several targets, like the targets in like in the environmental protections, product commodity productivities. In this case, put special attention to palm oil, sustainable palm oil. Another one, inclusivity. So so this is the shared visions, and there is big targets in there, and we synchronize this joint vision with the existing multi-stakeholder forum that has been established for a year now, year and more, and then just to incorporate this this shared vision with this consortium into the multi-stakeholder forum setup, and then we have it's also aligned with our support as well from Laser for the monitoring evaluation part, which is we help government and multi-stakeholder forum to establish the dashboard, multi-stakeholder forum dashboard. It's called landscape collaboration or landscape landscape dashboard, landscape improvement dashboard, so that the activities done by the stakeholders are recorded in this one and then being aggregated and so on and so on. And indicators were defined together through several workshops with all stakeholders, government, development partners, companies, and mostly about sustainable palm oil. And we use the regional action plan for sustainable palm oil as the basis for these indicators. So yeah, that's this kind of series of like a meeting or collaboration setups with the stakeholders were happen, and eventually with the sign of the visi landscape and the launch of the dashboard as well. That was the last event, and we also had an event last month, like to train all the stakeholders how to use the dashboard so that they can populate the information, the data, the aggregate data, the news for the like qualitative like stories, right? Not only the numbers, but also they can also show some qualitative stories in the dashboard, and so on and so on. So it's still being continued. I mean, it's not finished yet. That's why now we are working hard in the institutionalizations, so that what we have done proactively, it needs to be continued proactively by the government. Of course, the government was in the every process at beforehand, but we want to see more leadership in the government and how this setup can be sustained in a few more years to come, even without the project. So that's our big target now. And then we also want to replicate this to the other, the first one, the neighboring district, Subur Salam, and perhaps in the future also Aceh Tenggara. But it will be a different case because it's not palm oil there, so it's cocoa. So yeah, still more challenges ahead, more to come.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mas Farhan. And yes, definitely, there's always going to be challenges and things that will need to be worked on. But if we go back to that question, initial question, Mas Farhan, just one last thing. What are the visible and invisible changes that you can identify from this experience?
Wow, yeah, great question. Yeah, of course, that question might appeal. And feasible changes, yeah, we know like that's like the MOU signing, it's feasible, right? Stakeholders sign the joint visions, and stakeholders although starting input, right? Input the data in the dashboard, their achievement into the dashboard, so they become the district achievement as well as collective achievement. But the invisible one, it might be dynamics, like Mas Reza have said that it's different from the second component of the of laser, which is like including the farmer engagement activities. But the first component is more jurisdictional landscape approach, is very dynamics. We also learned a lot as well last week in RSPO conference Bangkok. And then now it becomes even more dynamics. The changes, it will be in ahead of time. So maybe like invisible changes, like it depends on the stakeholders' work as well, right? So we don't know how dynamic is the interest of the other stakeholders. Maybe now they commit and we align, our interests of all stakeholders are aligned, but in the future we don't know. That's why it's pretty much depends on their mandate as well, to the donors, and how they see how is their objective as well. And I think it's the homework, like that's what we aim, that government can coordinate and facilitate this interest. And so yeah, invisible changes might be like, maybe the positive sides is like they are more encouraged in attending the multi-stakeholder meetings, for example, or maybe they have been more proactive, the stakeholders to the government, like maybe previously the stakeholders should be invited first by the government, the local government or multi-stakeholder forum to the meeting or event, but now maybe they are starting to have initiative, like asking government to facilitate this or that. Maybe that also, like, yeah, like behavior changes maybe in the ground. But we still need to see in the future how it changes. And yeah, looking forward to it. Maybe Gazian has more to add, or Mas Reza, please.
Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, almost same as Mas Ron said, but the invisible change is the more we collaborate with other stakeholders, the more we know their motives. So the more we know how to adapt if there's a changes. Maybe I'm just adding a little that. Maybe Mas Reza can add something. Thank you.
I think maybe the blind spots we have is probably the changes within the companies. I don't think we interact with them quite often to understand, the changes that are happening in their own systems, right? We see things happening in their supply chain, but within the companies, not so much visibility. Because again, it seems like, they're just doing this as a risk mitigation activity, but not really like transformative, I would say.
Yeah, that's a super interesting insight. And I think, I mean, we've been discussing with Matt Farran already the implementation of signals of change for the multi-stakeholder forum that's already established. And also, So how do we implement it in that case where there's a landscape collective vision and the maturity of the multi-stakeholder collaboration is a little bit more advanced? And what's the value that signals of change can bring there, which is exactly that. Take a step back and look at the different key stakeholders. What's their position in terms of the collaboration? And how does that connect with what's needed in order to strengthen the institutionalization of change? And then for the other districts where you are looking at taking the model that you've applied and sort of replicated, then it can be used as a way of working on what's the baseline, what's the starting point, and what is needed to take that multi-stakeholder collaboration to the level where they can actually achieve a collective vision and the further institutionalization. So the interesting thing about these processes is that taking a step back and looking at what is the actual situation through a tool that can bring data and a more robust process in that sense, there's always value and documenting it so that we can share it with stakeholders and actually give the opportunity for the private sector to notice where they are at as a key actor in that ecosystem, and for other stakeholders to do the same, to really take a step back and look at where they're at. When we implemented this in Peru for 2 subnational platforms, one of the key insights that came up from the government stakeholders and the farmers that were participating and private sector was, first of all, I hadn't realized the different elements that are needed to make good collaboration, to make up for good collaboration. So there's a huge learning in that. When you look at the 5 dimensions and the 10 key principles, if you think about it, stakeholders, key stakeholders probably don't have an articulated vision of what good collaboration looks like. It's much more intuitive in a way. So bringing that articulation also helps, because then they go like, oh, and this was a concrete example. One of them went like, oh my, I hadn't noticed that, first of all, there are power dynamics taking place and that those are actually intervening and preventing us from collaborate properly. It sounds very simplistic, but it does actually happen that stakeholders are not thinking about these things the way that we do, because it's our work and we've done it before and so on. So there's value in bringing words and data to these kind of exercises, for even for the stakeholders themselves. Anyways, let's take a pause and a 5-minute stretching, bio, getting a beverage break. Don't turn off your Zoom, please. Stay on Zoom and just turn off your audio and your camera if you want to, and we'll see each other in 5 minutes. So 3:15 p.m. Please kindly come back promptly so that we can start. Oh, nice. A shower of thumbs up coming from.
Just try it actually. Sorry.
But no, that was fun. That was fun. Yes. So looking forward to seeing you in 5 minutes, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, we have 45 minutes left, and we are going to use this time to just have some conversations, to exchange some knowledge from landscape to landscape. And perhaps because we're a small group, we can do that in plenary. We don't need to do it in a breakout group. But before that, as I said, I wanted to show you the Signals of Change tool and how it works and what we're going to do with it in the coming weeks. So this is the Signals of Change tool. It's a simple tool. It's very comprehensive. It's in a Word document, and I'm going to create, for those landscapes who haven't been using it already, I will create one template for each. We can see that there's an explanation of how signals of change plus works. What is it that we are assessing? We have the 5 dimensions and the 10 key principles associated to them. And then we have the step-by-step that I described already. And here we start populating the information. So the first step towards completing the signals of change is this week, we're going to have in the ECA workouts a session where I'm going to go through the background questions and I'm going to help you fill them out. And this is basically gathering a brief description of the project, the scope of the collaboration that we want to assess. So perhaps in the case of LASER, as we said, we want to focus on this particular multi-stakeholder forum that already has a landscape collective vision. And in the other 2, start prepping for the other 2 to run this assessment beginning of next year. We need to decide what is the scope that we want to measure for each landscape team. Then we're going to go through these questions of, is there a collaborative space already? Is it formal or informal? Is it legally established? When and how? So gathering all this data and information to describe that collaborative space, what's the scope, what's the commodities or value chains that are covered? Does it have a governance mechanism in place? What type of structure is there? How is it operating? Is it membership based? Where is it located? How often stakeholders meet? You know, all of this information we're going to start collecting and putting together. If there's no collaborative space, then we ask whether, you know, how are stakeholders collaborating and if there's a intention to establish a collaborative space. Then we have the second step of the process, which is when we start going into the details of the questions that we want to ask stakeholders. And the way that we do this is basically we have some generic questions. So in the first phase of the process, we only ask the generic questions. What do you see as the key challenges that would benefit from more and better collaboration, the key challenges in the sector? What are the key objectives and priorities in that particular collaborative space or value chain? And then we go into the sort of general questions for each dimension. Yeah. So for the case of leadership and trust, we have 4 items that we ask stakeholders to rate from 1 to 5. In the particular case of leadership and trust, we ask them to rate the level of trust among stakeholders from their perspective, leadership capacities, a sense that there's a safe collective space for each stakeholder group to express their opinions, needs, and to be heard, power dynamics that are negatively interfering in the development of trust. And then within each dimension, we have the same logic for the principles, for the 10 key principles. And for the 10 key principles, we have items that are connected to those things that might be preventing collaboration from happening, which are the limiting conditions. And then we have the things that might already be happening in terms of good collaboration, which are the signals of change. So we are going to go through all of this into more detail with each of your landscape teams in the ECA workout calls. But I just wanted you to have like a generic overview of how the assessment is structured and the different choices that we have in terms of how to take it to stakeholders. In Ghana and in Peru, for example, we've done it in phases. We've had phase 1 where we only did the generic questions for each dimension. And then on a second phase, we went for the limiting conditions and the signals of change for the 10 key principles. That's a possibility. This is all up to us to decide together with you in terms of what's possible and feasible. And just to give you an example of what we obtain from this information that's valuable. So this is an example of the signals of change assessment from Ghana, where we had, you can see the consolidated data from the generic questions on leadership and trust, what all the different stakeholders had to say about these 4 different aspects of leadership and trust. And as you can see, the lower one was the power dynamics. So in a way, they were envisioning that there were power dynamics that are negatively interfering in the development of trust. But more interestingly than that, I would say that if we go to each one of the questions here and we look at the data, looking at the different responses per stakeholder group, this is what you can see on the right-hand side. So we had traditional authorities, other types of groups, we had NGOs, we had farmers, the consortium and the implementing partner, UNDP Global, country office. So these were choices of types of stakeholders that Ghana, the team in Ghana did. Our suggestion is to have to have less number of different types of stakeholders and sort of aggregate them more. But anyways, the point here is that we can see the sort of dispersion of data. If we look at, for example, the perspective of the public sector and the private sector versus what they call the traditional authorities or the farmers. So the farmers and the private sector and the public sector seem to be a bit more aligned in terms of how they see the levels of trust. But then, you know, NGOs had also very different perspectives within their own stakeholder group. So what we take from this is that there's a need to establish what do we mean by trust, and sort of have some work done in that multi-stakeholder group to perhaps work and discuss on trust and what does it mean and how does it look like and what do they understand by trust. And they probably have very different perspectives. That's why the results are so different. Same with leadership capacities, right? The traditional authorities seem to be very positive about trust and leadership capacities. But when you look at farmers or perhaps public sector, not so much private sector, they have different views. They don't see that leadership capacities as strong. All of this is really useful and helpful in opening up the space for conversation and for stakeholder group alignment. Here's another example looking at a particular principle. So leadership and trust. The principle is building a safe collective space. And here we look at, we didn't do the aggregation of data per stakeholder group, but we did look at the aggregated responses. I mean, not disaggregated by stakeholder. And then for building a safe collective space, which is one of the key principles, we looked at the limiting conditions and how present those limiting conditions were in that particular collaborative space. And so they were saying that conversations between stakeholders are mostly focused on technical content. So not necessarily a big issue for this particular collaboration. As you can see, there's a perspective of the limiting conditions perhaps not being so present. And so there's a question there to be asked as well. Is that so? There are no power dynamics influencing, or is it just that you're not able to see them? All of this is information to help the stakeholder the multi-stakeholder group to really work through what is exactly happening and how to best support that collaboration moving forward. I'm going to stop sharing now for a minute, and I'm going to move into the questions. Actually, let me share the questions and then I can copy them. That, as I said, I think there's more value in just sharing within our plenary, given that we are a small group. And thank you, Mas Baran and team, for sharing where you are at as a landscape in terms of multi-stakeholder collaboration. Now it would be great to hear from others. Basically, what is the current state of collaboration? I'm going to copy the questions. What is the current state of collaboration in your landscape, and what are the biggest challenges and the biggest opportunities? So can I move maybe to Kevin, so that you can share from SPLP, how do you see the current state of multi-stakeholder collaboration in your landscape?
Okay, so this is the multi-stakeholder external and internal in the SPLP. Okay. I think I will take an example for the multi-stakeholder in the Siak district. For example, the MSP was established, but it is not really can be said as functioning well because there is no particular people, either it's from the NGO or the government or the private sector, that is responsible in convening the multi-stakeholder. So at the moment, we can say that the SPLP is the one that's in charge, or maybe taking lead in the multi-stakeholder platform and all the activities. And our concern was that we are just wondering how long this participation or the support by the SPLP can benefit the Siak government or the Siak multi-stakeholder, because one concern is that once the SPLP is, let's say, finish their program in the Siak district, then we'll be taking charge of the platform. Because if we see from the government side, for them to run the platform, then it means that they will have to contribute financially or contribute resources, people's special to take care of the platform. And this is something that we are trying to think about, and we hope that in the next few years the MSP is functioning and it will be self-sustained. But at the moment, we are not really sure how it is going to happen. I think that's at the moment that I can think about, Soleh.
Excellent, Kevin. Thank you so much. And I think that relates a lot to what Mas Baran was sharing around the exit strategy in a way, or sort of that passing the baton back to the multi-stakeholder group and the government, right, in terms of ownership and leadership. I have to say that's one of the major challenges that we see across the board for all multi-stakeholder collaborative spaces, that they're usually initiated by some kind of change actor, sort of champion of collaboration, usually an implementing agency, a grassroots group, an NGO. And then it's hard for people to understand that actually it's a collective responsibility. It's not the ownership of that particular agency that initiated it or that helped put it in place.
No, because the NGO and the implementing partner, they are only exist because of the program, so they come and go for a certain period of time, and there should be I think aside from the sense of responsibility, there should be a party. In this case, I think that the best key person is someone from the government side because they will be there in the longer term.
Yes, absolutely. And then we have also the complexity of high rotation of government officials as well.
Exactly.
So there is a kind of moving parts that are hard to level up. I would love to hear to this point, because SustainCo team is also very much working on multi-stakeholder collaboration, and there's a strong MSF multi-stakeholder forum, Formica. So anyone from SustainCo team that would like to share as well, what is the current state of multi-stakeholder collaboration? What are the biggest challenges, the biggest opportunities? And then we can take back that point that Kevin raised on how do we pass the baton, right? How do we give back the ownership of that space to the stakeholders?
Yeah, maybe I can start, but Ajeng and Bagita also can add some insight too. So from Kutai Timur, maybe pretty much the same with Mas Kevin and Mas Bahran said before, but Formica is on the pace that we are now trusted by multi-stakeholder to host some dialogue, because the objective of the platform itself, when we ask the multi-stakeholder, is they want to have a hub or a place that they can talk or exchange the knowledge and information about topic that relate to the forestry or landscape or something like that. So we are currently host some dialogue that bring some topic that relevant to other stakeholder. But we see there are also some key agenda that Kutai Timur want to achieve, like the sustainable jurisdiction initiative and also the RSPO GA. So there are some topic that some objective that they want to achieve, and trusted to the Formica to host and facilitate the process. We see that as the opportunity, but also the challenge, because the secretariat itself is mostly involved only from the BAPEDA or the government agency. We see that it needs to involve more people from other sector, like the NGO itself, the private sector, and the CSO, because we cannot depend only on the government agency. So our effort now is to involve or include more people from other stakeholders to be involved in the secretariat, so they can move the dynamic from other multi-stakeholder in the working group. Yeah, maybe that's insight from me. Kak Ajeng and Kak Gita also can add some point.
Okay, thank you, Kak Febri. Soleh, may I add some point from what Kak Febri said? Yeah, so right now, the Formica is already a year legally formed within the SK Bupati. So it formed in 15 December 2023, if I didn't mistaken. And yeah, more or less, it's already a year. And what Kak Febri said before, the plus point is, yes, we are we get the trust from the multi-stakeholder forum to help the multi-stakeholder dialogue. And the plus point also, from that dialogue, we invite the speaker from the government sector, also from the private sector, and from the development partner sector. From that, we already help to two dialogue, and we prepare for the third one on the next week. From those two past dialogue or forum, we also identified some of the potential key person that engage and also that actively engage with us. Besides that, Sustainable team also had need assessment need assessment for validating what Formica needs. The result is the first one is they need to technically assistant for the analytical and also the some of the capacity building and stuff. And the second one is they need like technical assistance also for institutional building and the strengthening of the communication for the collaboration. And things that we give like the recommendation is they need they is the apa the Secretariat of Formica needs to give like definition of the roles and what's the expectation of each member, so we can advocate or we can accommodate each needs of the members and the people that being the member of Formica. That's all for me. Maybe Mbak Gita want to add?
It's all good from my side. That's the summary. It'll be interesting to kind of look at the recommendation and the result of the assessment as part of the baseline, and also to define kind of what are the steps of behavior change do we expect, since it will be different in each landscape. So kind of designing specific question to also become part of the MEL, as Sole mentioned before. It'll be interesting to compare and contrast with others. Thanks. Thank you very much. And thank you for bringing the capacity needs assessment also into the mix, because that is something that we worked a few months ago, which is another tool that is quite important in terms of supporting multi-stakeholder spaces, right? Because on one side, we are assessing the state of the collaborative process, how good it is, what's preventing it from being better, in a way, to put it very simplistically. And then on the other side, we also have, well, what are the skills and abilities and competencies that the stakeholders need to have in order to overcome the limiting conditions or really continue expanding on the change that's already happening, the good collaboration that's already happening. So the capacity needs assessment is actually another tool that's very useful in looking at how to best help that collaborative space. Yeah, I think there's a lot of learnings that we can bring from each landscape and what you're focusing on. LASER is very much focusing on the creation of that collective vision and sort of the process of handing back the ownership to government. Sustainable team is focusing a lot on the capacity building. In the case of SPLP, I think you are sort of focusing on how to strengthen the collaborative spaces from the basics of it. So there's a lot that we can cross-pollinate, and our role as well, my role, and Courtney's and Vanissa's and the UNDP and Alex and the UNDP team is to help make those connections as well. So hopefully we will get to do that in the coming ECA workout sessions. And we have one more ECA lab where the idea is to have this kind of learning and knowledge exchange as well. besides celebrating the successes. Leonita, anything that you would like to say or share, perhaps from your perspective as a sort of coming from a funder view and from SECO, who's also very much, I think, focused on supporting this kind of collaboration and multi-stakeholder work. Any thoughts or insights from your side?
Yes, thank you. How should I call you, Maria Sole? I hear someone. So,
Yes, thank you. Yes, Sole is okay. Yeah, absolutely.
okay, so yeah, thank you, Sole, for inviting me in this meeting, because actually this is my third week actually joined with SECO. So I actually gaining a lot of information from this meeting, because you know, it's not really easy to read to finish all reading the documents from these 4 landscapes. So I'm fully aware when we talk about collaborative and collaboration with multi-stakeholder, it's an easy words, but it's really hard to be implemented on the ground. And we talk a lot of things about the dynamic industry relation, and you also mentioned about the potential of the rotations of the government staff, which sometimes make it become harder, because we might have to start from the start. So I believe there are a lot of hard work that's been doing by the team on the ground. And I believe through this process, this learning process, we could start identifying the succeed from this project, and to also understand what we could learn from one landscape to other landscape. And I believe that there's like a different context between these 4 landscape, but I believe there are things that we could learn from one each other. That's from me. Thank you, Sole.
Thank you so much, Leonita, and welcome once again. Yeah, and we can connect bilaterally if you wish to at some point join any of the ECA workout sessions where we go deeper into the application of the tools and the reality of each landscape. But I think the reports on the baseline state of collaboration are going to be very helpful in terms of providing that more practical perspective on where each landscape is at in terms of their collaborative efforts. Great. Okay, anything else that anyone would like to say or share about their current state of collaboration, or perhaps any particular interest on something that you wish to hear more from another landscape on what they've done, where they are at, what kind of advice they might have? Let's take 1 minute and think about that. And if there's anything, just pop it on the chat or just open your mic and share it, please. Yes, Bagita, please, over to you.
So actually, I have a question, if you don't mind. It's actually on the kind of implementing the design for the type of signals of change that we would want to see. I know you've shared some examples as well to implement that, but I would assume that a lot of the observation would need to be done kind of as a continuous process. And in order to build a system that can monitor the signals of change that probably are not always visible, how would you suggest the process to be like? Is it something like designing an initial kind of vision of where the behavior is now versus the thing that the type of behavior that we would need in order for the vision to come true?
Yeah, I'm just curious. And
Yeah.
what constitute kind of who would be an objective judge in a way to say that the
Yeah.
stakeholders have graduated from one type of behavior to another type of behavior? Does that require also assessment that is more well-rounded, meaning other stakeholders would be part of that review, or would that be depending on the observer, which in this case probably us that's running the project?
Thank you so much, Bagita, for that question. It's such a relevant one. And I think there's a number of things. So first of all, as you very well point out, this is not a sort of, how can I say, an objective data measuring tool, because the data is not objective in itself. So it's very difficult to sort of have a tool that can bring objectivity to a topic that's inherently subjective, right? So the state of collaboration is a social construct. It's something that's based on our own individual perceptions, and we act in that reality based on how we see it, and how we see it individually is very subjective. So the tool aims more at making those subjective perceptions visible and putting them in one in front of the other in a way, curating them and putting them together to build a narrative of, you know, this is going back to the stakeholders. This is how you see the collaboration amongst you. These are the points in which you are in agreement. These are the points in which you are in disagreement. These are the different perspectives. So in a way, it's not a tool that tries to be objective. It's a tool that tries to reflect back to the stakeholders the reality as they see it. Yeah. And the value in that is to make that visible enough, your own perspective as a key stakeholder group and the perspective of other groups, to make that visible to you so that you can have something to work on, rather than you assuming what other stakeholders are thinking or seeing or doing. And the other, I think, value in the tool is, as I said, kind of articulating and making stakeholders conscious of the different elements that are needed in order to have a good collaboration. Because sometimes some stakeholders might think, well, you know, in order to have good collaboration, we only need money. We need money for the platform. And that's not true. Yeah, you need leadership, you need trust, you need to understand the power dynamics, you need to address conflict. Again, the visible and the invisible, right? Then in terms of the progress over time, from a process perspective, what we recommend is to do the assessment once a year. Now, on the first time that we do it, we might perhaps want to do the more comprehensive one, where we go through all the dimensions and principles. And then based on the results of that assessment, we may want to say, okay, for this particular multi-stakeholder forum, in this particular project, we need to focus on, like in your case, you know, build the capacities of the stakeholders in being able to facilitate their own forum and develop their leadership capacities. And so perhaps next year, when we go back to signals of change, we may want to focus on that only, or we may want to do the assessment all over again, because there's also value in seeing if after a year there are other priorities, there are other things that might have come up as critical. So there is that, as you very well say, that need of going back to the assessment and the tool, at least with certain periodicity, so regularity, so that we can see how things have progressed. But the problem with this is that progress doesn't necessarily mean that numbers will go up or higher, because it's not a linear thing, right? And people change. Some people move out of the multi-stakeholder group and new people come. So it's a little bit like trying to measure weather. You might have some trends if you look at it from a 10-year perspective, but if you look at it on a year-by-year basis, the richness of it is more to make informed decisions about how to support that multi-stakeholder collaboration in that moment, and perhaps get some insights on trends. But the data, as you very well say, it's not objective. It's not the same people. It's not like a medical study that you look at, I don't know, the progress of a person in 20 years with a certain disease that's taking a certain medication for 20 years. Those variables are static and constant, right? We are looking at assessing something that's all the time evolving. So yeah, a very long response to your question, but I think your question is really fascinating and complex. So that's why it's taken a while to respond. Any other thoughts on this particular topic from anyone? Okay, hopefully that was somehow helpful. But Bagita, I'm more than happy to continue these conversations, because I'm fascinated by this particular topic of how do we make this valid from a sort of assessment and quantitative and qualitative diagnostic tool perspective. Thank you. Okay, we're getting to the time to the time that we are going to conclude. And as always, our way of measuring how helpful this session has been and what else you might need from us is through, oh, sorry, I think the QR code is not the right one. So let me eliminate it just in case. But getting to gather your anonymous feedback and insight on what did you learn, what did you enjoy from today, what would you like more of? And so there's just 4 or 5 quick questions that if you can please take a couple of minutes to answer before we split our ways. I'm gonna leave us online for a couple of minutes and give you the time to answer these questions, please. Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate it. I think we need a few more minutes for Mas Faresa, Mas Baran. If you've finished, just let us know. Thank you. And thank you, Bagita, as well. So if you can just take a few moments to finalize the Menti. Those of you who haven't, we'll just move to the next slide, which is sharing a bit of where we're at, what are the next steps. So I will reach out to you to continue with our ECA workouts per landscape team. We're going to focus on the ongoing support and the key priorities that were established for this year. Revisit those and see if we want to maintain those for 2025 or if we need to change them. And we're going to focus on the signals of change and measuring ECA impact. So we're going to have a series of encounters, of meetings from now until end of the year, where we will sort of revisit and do some sense making around what we've done, how has that been useful, what kind of impact did it bring, visible, invisible. And we're going to refer to the ECA monitoring, evaluation, and evaluating and learning framework. And then we're going to have the final ECA lab of 2024 on Wednesday, November the 27th, at the same time as today. And hopefully we're going to celebrate and also have additional cross-landscape teams learnings. And I will share a proposed ECA support strategy for 2025, which is going to change a little bit the format in which we are providing support to you this year, based on how we see this evolving in a way that's in service of each landscape team. So thank you very much, as always, for your time, for your engagement, for your sharing. There's always that sort of richness in hearing from you. So thank you for showing up. And yeah, we'll keep in touch on the upcoming ECA workout sessions.